I'm a big fan of television horror, and when it's done well, it can easily rival cinema horror. And one of my favourite pieces of television horror has to be the 1979 adaptation of Salem's Lot. Now, Salem's Lot is was a book that was published in 1975. I say was as if it's no longer a book. It is a book. Published in 1975 and then adapted for the small screen in 1979. It was directed by Tobe Hooper, and it was originally shown as a mini-series in 2 parts. I think each part was around about an hour and a half, and then subsequently, because of its success, it was edited down into like a 2-hour theatrical release in cinema, I think, in Europe. And by the way, make sure you watch the miniseries, not the theatrical version that's been cut to shreds, but the miniseries version is fantastic. You can actually watch the whole thing as like a 3-hour film. It's amazing. Anyway, so the story surrounds a small town in America called Jerusalem's Lot, where a writer called Ben Mears comes into Salem's Lot, sorry, not Salem's Lot, Jerusalem's Lot, and wants to write a book while he's there. And one of the main reasons that he's there is that he wants to confront a fear that he's had, because when he was a child he went into this old house that was in the outskirts of the town called the Marsden House. Now, in this house there had been previous owners who had supposedly been involved in all sorts of dodgy dealings, and eventually they found the husband who'd hung himself, and I think he'd murdered his wife. Anyway, a few years after that, when Ben Mears is a child, he's told to go into the house to bring something out, a possession out from inside the house, as a sort of rites of passage. And when he's in there, he had an experience where he thought he actually saw the hanging corpse of Marsden, who was in there. Now, that terrified him, and he always questioned about whether he had actually seen what he thought he'd seen, and he wants to find out. But while he's there, at the same time, someone else actually rents a house or buys the house, because Ben Mears wanted to buy the house, and just before he has tried to buy it, another gentleman buys it, played by James Mason, who's just a phenomenal actor, and his name's Mr. Straker. I'm sure a play on words, you know, Bram Stoker, the writer of Dracula. And he buys the house for his business partner, a Mr. Barlow, who remains sort of very secretive. You never really see him, and he's bought this house, and they're living in there apparently. But anyway, so the story is that basically Mr. Barlow is actually a vampire, and people start going missing in the town, and it's really just it's a classic vampire tale about how Ben Mears then tries to confront his fears in that house, where there's also happens to be this vampire, because the idea is that certain places in the world, once they've been stained with something horrible, attract evil, more evil to them. And like I say, it was directed by Tobe Hooper. He directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, anybody that says to you that he was a one-hit wonder, just say to them, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, classic. Salem's Lot, miniseries, classic. And Poltergeist, classic. I know I've already said that we know Steven Spielberg had a massive input in that, but, you know, Tobe Hooper's name's on Poltergeist, so you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that, you know, he must have had some input in that film. So it's really scary. It has aged, and some of the scenes that are seen as like the most disturbing or the most frightening have aged a little bit. But what's different in this from the book is that in the book, Mr. Barlow, the vampire, is more like a sort of Dracula type figure, where he talks and he's a bit aristocratic. However, in this, he's very much the design is like the old Nosferatu design from the silent films. So he's more of a plague carrier, which I actually prefer. So anyway, I would definitely recommend it. If you can pick it up, make sure you pick up the full version. It's like a 3-hour film, and not the theatrical version, which is just a couple of hours. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, and I can't recommend it highly enough. The cast are fantastic, and yeah, you don't really get made for television, sort of one-off films like this, or mini-series, maybe one or two parts that are this well made anymore, and it's quite a shame. But definitely check it out. It's a classic vampire tale, and there aren't many vampire films that are this good, and this one is brilliant. So check it out.